Well, hello, and welcome to my cellar once again. Here we are coming into the doldrums of summer. The only con that happens in the summer is Gen Con and Origins, I guess. And there, I haven't been to Origins in years, nor do I care to. And Gen Con's just too damn big. So let's get into the good stuff, shall we? If you were to work for / run a magazine again, what would you want the focus to be as far as gaming goes? Just advice, or you include more gaming insights you've gleaned over the years, or perhaps some more monsters? I know the Boule can't be the only one you have in the old pocket. Well, if I was running a magazine today, it would mean that I had won the lottery and I had a lot of money I didn't mind losing. Distribution has become a real issue with anything outside of the States. And that aside, if those obstacles could be overcome, then there's the problem there's no advertisers to speak of. There's only a handful of companies. And to do something on a at least national level, you'd have to have a lot of advertising support, and there'd have to be, I think, a few more companies able to pay for that, or else the magazine would be nothing but little bitty tiny ads, which probably wouldn't work well either. And then, if all those obstacles were overcome, I'd want it to be just like the Dragon was, in that it was not afraid to deal with or delve into any kind of gaming. And it would be, and there's another question about Dragon in here. It would be once more the rising tide lifts all boat. We tried to do it with Gygax. We had some mini stuff. We had some board stuff. We had role-playing stuff. And we felt at the time, that was a few years ago, we felt at the time that it was possible perhaps to pull this off one more time. But then the the widow stepped in and screwed everything up. And the last I heard about the widow, she's getting her butt sued by somebody from California because she violated some kind of licensing deal. And I hope she loses her house. But that's just me. How long did it take you to edit and choose content for each Dragon magazine? Was there an approval process to what was selected, or was it more of an individual choice on my part? Yeah, I put in what I wanted to. I tried to balance. It was harder in the beginning when I had less to work with, but Gary never told me anything I couldn't do. A couple of times I ran things by him because I thought they might have future impact down the road, and he was cool with it. Yeah, go ahead and run it. For instance, the different, we put them out as NPCs, but Druids, Rangers, all those guys, they ended up becoming character classes. But it pretty much was just, well, I was a one-man staff. I put in what I wanted to. I put in what interested me. I put in what I liked. There was always 3 piles of manuscripts on my desk. There's the one that came in that only needed minimal editing and they were ready to roll. And then there were ones that came in that needed some work, but still good topic material. And then there was a pile that needed a lot of work, but again, it was an interesting topic. So the ones that needed a lot of work got heavy rewrites. The ones that needed some buffing up here and there, you get the drift. sometimes I would start working on one of those third classes of manuscripts a couple months in advance of when I knew I was going to need it, because I was starting to put together issues that had a focus. How long did it take? Well, different pieces took different amounts of time. Once we got pretty good at it, laying out a Dragon magazine was just a few hours of burnt fingers and razor slices. Yeah, it was more than a few, but all right. Did TSR ever try to hire you after Gary was gone, or WotC? No. Nobody ever approached me, and after Adventure Gaming went out of business, I pretty much dropped out of the gaming industry for 20 years. I didn't change my name, move away, or anything like that, but nobody approached me. I was probably tainted. Particularly, I'm sure the Blooms just made me out to be the worst bastard that ever rolled a set of dice. I know you don't get a lot of comments initially, but I appreciate all of these because I view them as historical records. Yeah, that's what everybody wants to be known as. Yes, Sonny, I'll sit on my rocking chair in the sun and tell you about how it was back in '03. Something we can come back with years later and hear first-hand accounts from those who were there in the first days. Yeah, wouldn't it have been great if they'd had tape recorders and Lewis and Clark had tape recorders? Wow, wouldn't that have been amazing? Now, on to an observation. I've noticed in modern editions that the character's backstory and background are important to the player. In older editions, what happens during the game is the story of the character. For instance, everyone starts with a blank slate. Or, for example, everyone starts with a blank slate and everything. If anything your PC did prior to level 1 really didn't matter. Pardon me. Certainly wouldn't be nearly as heroic as anything they do once they start adventuring. That's just my anecdotal observation, of course. Okay, now someone else made a similar observation. With the newer editions of D&D 5th, there's a trend that making and generating and fleshing out characters is just as important within the game as playing through the adventures. What is your take on this in light of your focus being in old school? I don't care for it. It seems to me that spending that kind of time fleshing out a backstory on someone who, if you're playing, first edition or original, could be dead in the first hour, would have been a humongous waste of time. So we didn't. It didn't really matter. What we did from the point that we gathered together is first level, hey, let's all go mess something up together. What came before didn't matter. And really, with the original rules pretty limiting as to what a character can start with, it's not like, I come from a very rich family and I get to start with a trained war horse and the finest armor and oodles and oodles and oodles of gold because my parents have them and I'm the heir apparent or whatever. That would have gone against the grain of the game, in my opinion, in a way too much. That just went way against the grain of the game. Personally, I think it's silly to spend any amount of time at all developing a backstory, because the original structure and framework of the game was you were a cut above the general, the hoi polloi, the masses. By becoming an adventurer, you were not content with whatever your lot in life had been. What kind of backstory are you going to write about growing up on a farm looking at the ass end of a mule for the first 14 years of your life plowing? I don't understand what other kind of backstories there can be. You're a 0-level adventurer. You're trying, a first level in this case, and you're looking to become a better adventurer, a more skilled individual, etc. Personally, I think an elaborate backstory on a brand new character is a farce. There, I said it. It's a farce. Because it implies that if you feel so confident that you can spend all this time writing this up, you're not likely to die. Boy, does that just go against everything. My opinion. Your mileage may vary. To say at least the quality of your videos, I love watching them even if they are low quality. It's just awesome to see what you think about things and learning from your experiences. Well, thank you. But I still want to get a better I still want to get a better camera. I'm using a bargain bin camera I bought 10, 12 years ago. And that's why I started the Patreon. And so please, if you enjoy these, go throw a few bucks into my Patreon and I can make a better production. I can get a better camera and I can pay the guy that's doing my video work more of a greater percentage of what he's probably worth. So there it is. And you'll notice this episode that there's a list of names at the end in the credits. And those are the Patreon subscribers. And the Patreon subscribers have 2 levels of benefit, if you will, 3 levels. 3 to support, 6, and then 9. Well, and the 6 gets a, let's see, I don't remember how we're going to do this exactly. The $9 gets them both. They get an unplugged video, no editing, no nothing, just me ranting. And then I'm going to do a Zoom Q&A. And we'll start with a 60-minute Q&A and see how it goes. See who shows up. But you'll only get the link if you've kicked in. So, it's the way of the world, I guess. All right, next. The perils of metal dice, haha. Or how I stopped worrying and learned to love the dented tabletop. Well, yeah, I guess, it's all what you're playing on. Plastic dice will skip across a nice wooden table with no problem. Metal dice, it's a little different. Have you or any of your family played any computer RPGs, adventure games, like stuff like Wizardry, Ultima, Zork, Bard's Tale, Might and Magic, Goldbox D&D game, Pool of Radiance, etc.? And if so, what are your impressions of them? I played one of those. Way back when I played some Might and Magic. Now, still back, but not nearly as far back, I really fell in love with Age of Magic. And it's all 3 of its iterations. Wizardry, Ultima, Zork, Bard's Tale, they held no appeal for me whatsoever. Not the slightest bit. I got into Age of Magic because it was turn-based. The second edition had an editor. You could create your own. They called them maps. We wargamers would call them scenarios. And they were quite complex. And the art palette available was gorgeous. Regarding running games at TSR, did certain folks have preferences for using minis and grids, sand tables during games, or theater of the mind instead? Well, for several years, there were no D&D specific minis, period. Now, at Lake Geneva, we had the original plastic monsters, the rust monster and what became the boulet, but he wasn't a boulet then. We had those, but there were no horrible, fantastic stuff. There was a guy in Utah that made some really interesting stuff. He did an Acheron Legion, he did a Shambling Mound, and he did an Ant and a few others. He's long since out of business. McEwen Miniatures. He also did an incredible line of individual weapons so that you could modify figures. Of course, you can't do that anymore now because the figures are made of pewter, and pewter doesn't modify it worth a damn. Got to have jeweler quality power tools to do anything. So it was pretty much theater of the mind. Now, there was one notable exception, and that was that if we needed a spatial reference type thing, we would use dice to show, okay, all the white dice are the bad guys, and there's 2 over here, and there's 2 over there, and there's 3 of them coming up behind you over there, and you guys are the other colored dice in the middle here. And so that would occasionally, I can't say how much Gary did it or Rob did it. I did it not to scale, but just to help the players get a spatial reference, particularly in the early years when this was all very, very new to us. It just helped. But there weren't minis to play with, to speak of. You could get a medieval knight or a medieval knight on a horse. There weren't any wizards or ents or goblins or anything like that. Not for a long, long time. Was the development of history and lore for Greyhawk done much during your tenure? No. Not to my knowledge. Gary did that. That was Gary's baby. Now, let's see, go on and read the rest of this. Was it done by Gary on his own, or was it more a collaborative effort or developed through game sessions or the like? I'm sure that a lot of the fleshing out of Greyhawk came from the sessions that they played. Like any new dungeon, it's kind of a blank slate, and the players' interactions in the dungeon tend to formulate what's going to happen in the future. Now, keep in mind that at Gary's table particularly, it was wide open for new things. And with Rob Kuntz and Terry Kuntz playing, Terry invented this new monster that he sprung on him, and it became the Beholder, which is one of the scariest things in the whole damn panoply of peril that D&D presents. So how much of the final details in that were strictly out of Gary's head or were developed during play and therefore had some input from the players themselves, I couldn't tell you. I wasn't there. Greyhawk was done and published when I first played the game in '74. Thank you so much for your time answering questions. I have one for you regarding hit points. In video 172, going back and checking, you commented there's more nuance on the nature of hit points and maybe better call better close call points. Okay, yeah. The healing potions might be interpreted as Red Bull or energy drinks. In video 174, you also mentioned that hit points might work well as fatigue points. My question is, how do you interpret damage from other sources? For example, environmental fire and combustion of clothes, poisons, blasted dragon's fire. Thank you very much. Well, blasted dragon's fire, I probably didn't worry about it because you're probably crispy critters. Because I think it's ludicrous unless you're extremely well protected and that anybody could stand up to a blaster. Come on, look at Game of Thrones. For whatever else it is, it's got some great fantasy battle scenes in it. And when Daenerys' dragon comes down and wipes out the Lannister army, that ought to tell you just how badass dragons ought to be. Smaug's a wuss. He just burns up the lake town. So you get poisoned and you recover, or you get charred a little bit or something. Well, I generally inflict a number of hit points lost as a result of that. And if you've been badly burned, your agility or your dex is going to suffer. And that might be temporary, but I would apply it. I would, it's simply, okay, this thing that just happened to you has caused you to have 6 fewer hit points. And actually, for the remainder of the adventure, I don't care how many cures you get. Those I wouldn't necessarily, those 5 burned out, again, it's a case-by-case basis, and I think that's the way most DMs ought to rule, on a case-by-case basis. But don't be easy. Adventuring's tough. It's supposed to be. Run away to fight another day. No shame in coming back alive. Even if you failed in your mission, you came back alive. That's your number one goal. Coming back alive every day. It's like a lot of the cop shows. First thing they teach the rookies. In The Untouchables, Sean Connery telling Kevin Costner, the first rule of good police work is come home at night. Let's see. Yeah, but again, it might work as, I think what the nuance I'm looking for is, can be interpreted as all of, or any of those things. They're a collective assessment and measure of certain skills and abilities before you croak. All of those things are nuanced into what hit points are. And I think if you broaden your horizon as to those elements, I think as a DM you'll be better able to make arbitrary or fiat type rulings that are fair to the story and to the player. Do I have any insight on Vecna and Gary's thoughts on his creation? Seems like Vecna has become incredibly popular recently due to Stranger Things. Well, no, I don't know anything about Vecna except what I'd read in whatever Gary handed to me to read or to edit or whatever. I don't believe it's just Stranger Things. I know Death Saves, the Joe Manganiello operation organization, whatever, on the West Coast. They're also into Vecna too because they're into extremes. They actually played Dragonborn. By the hoary house of Hoggoth, Cascoid. Have you seen the Doctor Strange movie yet, The Multiverse? Yes. I loved it. But then again, why wouldn't I? If and when I go to see one of these comic book movies, I don't go with the canons of the story affixed in my mind. A couple of reasons. Number one, I didn't read most of these comic books. And number two, it predisposes you to be disappointed. I like going Ant-Man. I'd never read anything about Ant-Man. Whenever I went to the movie, wow, it was great. People are complaining, oh, didn't have this, didn't have that, too many joints on his feelers, geez, come on. Go see the story and enjoy it. Or don't. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the first Doctor Strange. Possibly because when all the Marvel characters came out when I was in high school, Doctor Strange was my favorite. So I'm predisposed to like them, I think, rather than predisposed to pick them apart. Have I seen all the Marvel Universe movies? No. And all the Thor movies? No. If I have a chance to catch one on TV for free or something, I might. Am I going to go to the theater and pay $15 for a ticket? No. Am I even going to go on Tuesday afternoon and pay $5 for the senior citizens matinee? No, probably not. Because I don't have anybody to go with. My wife's not into that stuff. And so most everybody else I know works during the day. Pardon me. If possible, I'd like to know about the history and backstory of the demons and devils of D&D. Like Demogorgon and Tiamat, or Jubilee. I thought Tiamat was a three-headed dragon. Demonic in nature, but still a dragon. Secret. Now disclosed. Gary pored over and combed through every book that he had, finding different names that people called the devil. The devil as defined in the Christian teachings, the devil. And made them each a different individual persona and ranked them. And that was pretty much him. It was a rabbit hole he went down one time and came back out on the other side with all these hard things that are going to go in first edition. Above and beyond the hard things that had already gone into original. There were synonyms. A lot of the titles of ranks of demons and devils are different words. Demogorgon, I believe, is something that's pulled out of another classical art author's writings. And Gary read about it and stuck with him, and so it's hard to describe somebody else's creative process. It's hard to describe my own creative process. I work on inspiration and flash. Gary worked on heavy research. Let's see, what else? Yeah, I liked it. It was good. Whether or not Sam Raimi is the perfect director, I don't know. But it was good stuff, yes, right. Okay, next. Hey there, I offered myself to DM a new group of players that have never played role-playing games before. Wish me luck. Also, for the new players' sake, what are the best advice for new players? Okay, brand new DMing for the first time for a group of new players. Don't expect a whole lot of the players, and you won't be that disappointed. Expect a lot of blundering around. Case in point, when I run my Wheel of Blame game, the encounters generally run right around 25-30 minutes, give or take a little either way. Except the first one. The first one generally runs 45 minutes or longer. And it's just because of the nature of a new group playing together, whatever. So, looking at that example, expect that it'll take a while for this new group of players to find their footing. Expect to walk them through. Expect to use more description than you might later on with more experienced players. Wordier, more complete descriptions will be necessary. A little bit of a briefing before the game actually starts would not necessarily be amiss. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Pick a recent movie that you think most of. Okay, you're all going to be in this, and we're going to do that, and give them a breakdown of what we're going to do, what they're going to do. They've never done it before, and say right up front, yeah, it's pretend. We're all going to pretend, and we're going to pretend together, and just get that elephant recognized. It's going to sit there in the corner of the room all night if you don't. It's there. Recognize it. Yeah, it's pretend. Okay, we're all going to be kids again. Okay, depending on the age of the group. Now, if you've got a bunch of teenagers, just tell them, all right, we're all going to be characters in the latest Marvel movie, except the setting is going to be here. Give them something relatable that they can grasp onto and may ape or mimic. Talk about Jumanji. Talk about some of the more popular movies, Fish Out of Water, doing new things in that. For the players, ask questions. Garner information. Take notes if you want about things you've learned or where a place something is, or if you want to come back. For new players, this is a balancing act, but it's hard to ask too many questions. Now, nothing pisses me off faster than asking the same question 2 or 3 times because you weren't listening. But gathering information is vital for character survival. If you weren't paying attention when they told you that the third door on the right had a really nasty hairy shit thing that's going to eat you when you walk in, and you go ahead and you walk in, well, hey, tough luck. Get information. Hold information. Don't go in with preconceived notions. Go in with whatever clues you have, but be broad-minded, open-minded. DM, again, be patient. Shepherd them through as though they're second graders that you're getting to learn how to use the auditorium and when to go to, whatever. But the concept is the same. Shepherd them. Shepherd them. And if you do it right and they do it right, you'll have a hell of a good time and do it again. And that's what it's all about, right? Okay, this guy has 2 questions. Is the time right for the reintroduction of the girdles of sex change? I think this is a subject you poo-pooed in the past. Because of the fine line yourself and Mr. Gygax felt the need to take when these magic items prolificated. Yeah, No, I don't think it is. And we'll go into the second question here in a second, and I'll explain further. Um, could you revisit the problems that you, a Dragon editor and TSR, sought to why you sought to quash these girdles? What were the deleterious elements these brought up D&D? And then for the last one, do you think these girdles of sex change what impact do you have in the current cultural climate? Okay, you really dove right in here to some of the queasy feelings that we got. Keep in mind that culturally, the sexual revolution was still unwinding in 73 when this game first, the tail end of 73 when it first came out. And that the old joke was that everybody that lived in the Midwest waited for 3 years to find out what was going on the coast. The radio stations played music weeks and weeks after it premiered on the East or the West Coast. And so while the sexual revolution and sexual mores and sexual outlook were changing, they were changing slowest in the Midwest. We all came from a Midwest sensibility, and there was always just a little bit of a squeamishness. I don't believe Gary ever had any issues whatsoever with who you slept with. None that I'm aware of. And that wasn't it. It was because things were being talked about out in the open, the Stonewall thing, and gays were coming more out into the everyday life. We weren't going to rock the boat at TSR and advocate anything, because these girdles, okay, changed from a male to a female. All right, that's a bodily morph type thing. And then, all right, magic spells would do that too. But then to change your sex and then your proclivities, it's not enough that your burly fighter just got turned into a burly lesbian or a burly woman, but now it's a burly lesbian. Today? Oh, hell no. Hell no. With the woke crap that's going on, no way would I touch anything like that. Because there's just way too many nits that could be picked on those topics by pedantic little pissy know-it-alls. No, it's just way too woke right now. Nobody really knows what woke means. A lot of people think they know what woke means. Some people think they're woke and they aren't. Some people don't know what they are. Will I go into that crap today? No damn way. No. If that's something you want to do in your campaign, hey, you're the DM. You can invent any damn magic item you want. But with what's going on, no. With the dumpster fire that came about trans people up in Lake Geneva earlier in the year, or well, it was last year, no. I wouldn't go near the topic with a 10-foot pole. Why? What's the need? Do you have to have that possibility in your world? Fine. Put it in your world. Personally, I think there's enough hazards to face in my campaign worlds, and on Makanda, there's plenty of things to worry about other than being turned into the other sex. Plenty of things. I think it would be a horrible, terrible thing to do in the current culture. Okay, your wizard grind examples are a little off, but nevertheless they prove your point. Against your argument is the fact that Gandalf and Saruman. Oh, Jesus. The only reason I'm reading this, I am so sick of hearing, Gandalf did this, Saruman did that, Sauron. That's one book. One book. Middle-earth. One setting. Middle-earth. So what? I don't give a damn if Sauron shot fireballs out his butt and peed electric lightning bolts. I don't care that Gandalf carried a sword. The reason wizards weren't allowed to use swords was twofold in Gary's mind. Number one, there is the very prevalent thing about iron dampening magic or repelling magic or whatever. That's a very, very old, goes clear back to the beginnings of the Fae legends and how cold iron would defeat the Fae. If wizards were allowed to use swords, then what Gary feared would happen. They'd become too powerful, and they'd end up dominating the campaign too sweet. No one character or class should be able to dominate the campaign. The game, from the very, very onset, was cooperative. We all do better when we help each other. Three Musketeers. One for all for one. I don't think you can make an argument against the restrictions based on three wizards in one book cycle. I'm sorry. Everybody wants to be Superman. Okay. Better example. Every red-blooded guy wouldn't mind being Brad Pitt for what they think that would get him, and every lady wouldn't mind being Jennifer Aniston. Just two examples I pull out of this gear. Gandalf defeating the Balrog. Okay. Go back to your dungeon compilation. Go back into the strategic review and read the article. Nothing Gandalf did, nothing he did supports him being any higher than a 5th level OD&D magic user. Nothing he did. We don't know what he did with the Balrog when they fell. But nothing else he did. No spells, no nothing. Makes a case for him being anything level than a 5th level. Anything higher. And I published that article to point out, because level creep was starting to creep in, that, hey, what's the deal? You want to use Gandalf as an exemplar? Prove to me he's anything better than a 5th level OD&D magic user. No spells he makes, no magic he utters, no deeds he does, nothing would support that. Yeah, okay. Muhammad Ali was a great boxer. Absolutely a master of the craft. Why aren't all boxers like Muhammad Ali? Sauron, Gandalf, Radagast, exemplars, one of a kind, in one mythos. Granted, the mythos has been read by lots more people than any other one. But if you don't go and read some of the other mythos and find other ways to look at the fantasy world, other points of view, you're always going to want to know, why can't I be Gandalf? Because if a wizard goes adventuring, it provides them with unimaginable possibilities. It must inspire their abilities. What's more, it provides them with money to pay for schooling to further their sorcery, and may even provide direct access to new spells via looted spell books. Why wouldn't a wizard take that opportunity? Wizards are brave, adventurous, and social team members, even if they are ego-driven braggarts. Ego-driven braggarts. Okay. Thing is, the wizard's got to be a part of a team to succeed. And there shouldn't be any kind of rules for any character class to be able to buff up in secret, have some extra level edge to buff a character to increase, to promote them or whatever. That goes against the very basic fairness of the game. And now a last question about a board game. Could I have your opinion on Avalon Hill's Squad Leader, assuming you've played it? As a matter of fact, I have. As a matter of fact, the late John Hill, who designed and did Squad Leader, was a friend of mine. And as he was quick to point out, he did not do Advanced Squad Leader. Squad Leader is a wonderful game. Advanced Squad Leader was Avalon Hill's desire to cash in. You see the same thing today with the movie franchises. Avalon Hill decided to cash in and do another game, bigger, better, brassier, shinier, etc. John Hill said, absolutely not. And so they did it anyway with somebody else. And he vehemently denied having anything to do with it right up till the time of his death. And I think it's an excellent game. I think it's one of the best of its genre. Now, that answers all the questions. Let's see, what else? Patreon. Please, please, please. I need a new camera. I need to pay my guy. I need to be able to pay him so I can keep him. And I don't make any I don't. The sponsors I have don't pay me enough money to pay a video guy. I'm looking for sponsors, always. If you're not a subscriber to the Curmudgeon, please do. If you got a few extra bucks this month, throw it my Patreon way. We'll have a Q&A. I'll talk about whatever anybody wants to talk about. I'll talk about growing dragon tongue flowers, which I have in my backyard right now, and they are blooming, and they're gorgeous. I'll talk about gaming. I'll talk about gardening. I'll talk about, I'll answer questions. Guess that's the easiest. Then the unplugged, then I'm just going to rant on a few things that I want to say here, but I don't want to lower the level of the Curmudgeon any lower than it is. But we can delve one level deeper with the unplugged. And that's all I got. So in this hot weather, stay cool, stay hydrated, and keep rolling those dice. And until next time, da-da-da-go-vee.
He's the Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeon. feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Called it Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's a curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. TSR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.